The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Sprocki, and I am the host of Always Another Way podcast. And I have a master's in professional counseling. I am the IPPY award-winning author of Stop Looking for a Husband, Find the Love of Your Life, and Nasty Divorce, A Kid's Eye View. I write positive divorce advice for the HuffPost, and I'm trained in clinical hypnosis. And this podcast speaks to out-of-the-box thinkers, and it's for those who hear the call of hope in always another way. And if you're very rigid and set in your beliefs, this is probably not your cup of tea. However, you should note, tastes can and do change. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. We are on episode 68 now. So there are going to be, after today, 68 wonderful guests and wonderful topics. And if you have not subscribed yet, you can go to iTunes, your podcast app, search for Always Another Way, 2 L's. And if you subscribe and rate if you feel inclined, then the podcast will move higher in the charts and more people can hear these wonderful guests and super life-changing information. And today is, oh my gosh, like if you could have something that would just scream another way, this is it. And one of the things I was thinking about is, and maybe you've ever been told this by somebody, and maybe not always like for a medical condition, but just in life, if somebody tells you, oops, well, there's nothing you can do. You're out of options. And do you take that to heart? Because I know a lot of times, and especially when we look at authority figures, and not that sometimes it's not a real thing, that maybe you really are. You know, we are all going to die someday. And then sometimes really there isn't one. But maybe there is, because not everything is just black and white or yes or no. And what if instead of always taking a diagnosis or maybe a prognosis or anything just literally to heart? There's a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, which shows and proves that kind of what you think drives your beliefs. Not to say that like you can't think, I'm never going to die, and you never will. That's not true. Like there's a physical realm of what is possible, but there's also the belief of what is possible. So my next guest has an awesome story of somebody that definitely maybe was told one thing or given a set of options, but went a different way. So Marci Serota studied food science and human nutrition at the University of Florida, where she earned a Bachelor of Science with honors in dietetics. She completed her dietetic internship at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, and became a registered dietitian nutritionist. I tried to combine those words for a new gig. In 1999, Marci worked as a clinical dietitian in the hospital setting for over 6 years and spent 3 years in private practice, where she was fortunate to learn about and practice nutrition intervention for clients with food addiction. After taking some time off to care for her children, one of whom was diagnosed with a brain tumor at the age of 3, Marci became a certified yoga teacher. She developed an interest in Ayurveda, the sister science of yoga, which is an ancient holistic healing system that addresses the underlying causes of disease, the way that we live, and what we put into our bodies. And through working with an amazingly gifted Ayurveda practitioner, Marci learned about using food as medicine. And Marci has integrated this holistic perspective, as well as her experience in treating food addiction and diabetes into her nutritional approach to hypothalamic
Hypothalamic.
That word. Obesity. I'll let her talk to you about it. And Marci's experience as both a registered dietitian nutritionist and as a parent to a child with hypothalamic obesity puts her in a unique position to help others who are dealing with this extremely difficult condition. So welcome to the show, Marci.
Thank you.
Tongue-tied today.
It's a very hard word for everybody.
And I made up a new word. So I think probably the best place to begin is let's just start with your story as it begins.
Sure. So when my son was just short of 4 years old, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And it was a benign brain tumor, but it was in a really, really bad place, which
And
is
scary.
very scary. Very scary. It was devastating news.
Yeah.
He had been showing signs of something for years, and we went to lots of different specialists, and we're sort of pointed in different directions to counseling and to speech therapy and occupational therapy, all of which were appropriate, but really what was going on behind it all is that he had a brain tumor growing on the part of your brain called the hypothalamus, which is where hypothalamic obesity comes from. And the hypothalamus is the part of your brain. It does a lot of things, but it controls your appetite and your feelings of satiety, and it also controls your metabolism. So when you're growing a tumor on that part of your brain, it causes damage, and it damages your brain's ability to sort of, tell you when you've had enough to eat, and you're just always feeling hungry all the time.
Right.
So, and then it just knocks out your metabolism. So where it's, 2/3 of that of somebody else who doesn't have this condition. So we had the tumor removed. We were told that there was, a pretty high possibility that it was going to cause this damage, whether or not it was removed.
Yeah.
And pretty shortly thereafter, we started to see signs. My son, who was about 4 by then, he was just hungry all the time. 5 minutes after he ate, he wanted more, constantly asking when it was time to eat, constantly hungry, constantly, getting up in the middle of the night, going into the refrigerator and eating a ton of food. Nothing ever seemed to be enough. And
little and can't understand, just because you don't even have like a rational brain till after 7.
And that was the hardest part, is that he didn't understand. And so he was crying about it all day long.
Oh my.
And got to the point where he just hated me.
Yeah.
Because I was what was standing between him and this most basic primal need to eat,
And probably just for you too, like maybe I can guess like a helpless feeling of because you really can't explain.
Yeah, no, it was awful. It was awful. And, when you read about this in the medical literature, it says, this type of condition is generally unresponsive to diet and exercise. That, no matter what you do, you really are not going to be able to stop the rapid weight gain and this, 24/7 hunger that these people experience once they've had this sort of damage to that part of their brain.
Yeah.
So, we sort of struggled with this. We very much struggled with this for a good 5 years. And, I went to see, I am a dietitian, and I had been one before this happened, but nothing that I was doing seemed to be working, and I was very emotionally involved.
Sure.
So I took him to see 2 other pediatric dietitians. I took him to see, several specialists and endocrinologists, and, I got sort of the same advice, watch the fat intake, try to give him fat-free foods because he's not going to know anyway. He's going to feel hungry anyway. So just give him like the lowest calorie things possible.
Right.
And, I could just tell, I had one doctor say to me, I don't envy you. This is a very frustrating condition for doctors to treat because we really don't have any answers and there's really not much we can do.
Yeah.
So
Extra frustrating with that.
It was very frustrating. And just to give you an example of how aggressive this condition is, he weighed about 33 pounds when he was diagnosed with this tumor. And so he was around 4 years old. By the time he was 9, he weighed almost 180 pounds.
Wow.
So he outweighed me.
Yeah.
And at this point, he was just getting very angry and, sometimes even getting more threatening to be violent with me.
Yeah.
But would get physically intimidating when I would try to keep him
Because that's
from
like a man.
eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Size.
I mean, that's how much my husband weighs.
Yeah.
So,
And I just want to ask there's that, but how did like school, how did he deal with that? Like with kids and things like that?
it was hard. I mean,
Yeah.
around, he's looked very different very quickly after this surgery. He was on a lot of steroids and that didn't help.
Yeah.
And also drove the hunger, but it sort of gives you this moon face and, very big belly and, unibrow, and your features just look completely different.
Right.
And, a lot of the kids when he went back to school were scared of him because they were 3 years old,
Yeah.
4 years old. In first grade, he started to be bullied about his weight, which was really, really difficult. And so I ended up just taking him out of the school that he was in and putting him in this very, nurturing, progressive, small school, which was a great thing and really helped with his self-esteem.
Yeah. Right.
But it was really difficult.
I'm sure just like and psychologically, and especially for a little kid who doesn't even know like the realms of that and this stuff happening and just the like out of control stuff.
Yeah. And he just didn't understand. And, kids that age just don't understand. For me, it wasn't really about the way he looked. For me, what was terrifying was watching these numbers on his blood work.
Yeah.
His triglycerides, the fat in his blood just climbing exponentially, and liver enzymes, which means his liver was literally starting to turn into fat, started climbing exponentially. Cholesterol, blood pressure started getting high. I mean, these were the things that kept me up at night.
Right. Real health conditions.
Yeah. So this wasn't about the way he looked. This was like, this child's not even 9 years old, and he's going to have diabetes soon.
Yeah.
And, my whole life just sort of turned into playing food police. I didn't have a life because I couldn't leave the kitchen. The minute I left the kitchen, he was in there taking food and running back to his room. I had a younger child. I still do have a younger child. So, it was very hard to be able to divide my attention.
Right.
And, everywhere you go, parties, restaurants, fairs, carnivals. I mean, food is kind of the main event.
Right.
It's the main thing. And so it was very hard to go to those things, very hard to go to birthday parties because one piece of cake wasn't enough. One piece of pizza wasn't enough. And then there would be sort of a full-on tantrum in front of everybody. So we just sort of stopped going to things.
Yeah. Oh,
and so, eventually I just got so tired and worn out and depressed. And my younger son started showing signs of having these food aversions.
Yeah.
He just sort of stopped eating foods that he had always been eating. And I could tell psychologically this was having an impact on him.
Right.
He was constantly watching his older brother and his mother fighting over food. And I would lose my temper. It was because I was terrified.
And probably frustrated. I mean, that's a lot of years of buildup of things.
And it's all day long.
Yeah.
Multiple times a day, every day. So, once I saw that my younger son was being affected, I just sort of thought, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't change his trajectory. And maybe I should just focus on creating happy memories. And maybe we won't have as much time, but I can try to make the time that we do have at least more special for all of us and not just this miserable existence.
Right.
And so, it wasn't like I went crazy. I wasn't bringing Oreos and donuts into the house or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, I just sort of stopped fighting with him so much. And if he wanted 10 apples, I just let it go.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. It was like, an entire loaf of bread, 10 apples. So even though I was keeping healthy food in the house, it didn't matter. It was quantity, it was making him sick. And so then he really started gaining weight very much more quickly. And we finally got to a point where his liver enzymes were high enough that the pediatrician told us we needed to go see a gastroenterologist. And my husband took him to that appointment because I was too afraid to go.
Yeah.
I knew what he was going to say. Actually, didn't know what I thought I knew what he was going to say.
Yeah.
But what he ended up saying was, and remember, my son was 9 years old at this time,
Yeah.
is, you need to try to find a surgeon that'll do gastric bypass surgery on your son.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
weight loss surgery, where
Yeah.
they take off half your stomach and, make it to about the size of an egg, and they bypass a third of your intestines so that you're malabsorbing nutrients. And for a 9-year-old, that's pretty dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
So that's not something a doctor recommends for a 9-year-old unless things have just really reached a very critical point. And so, I just kind of woke up and pulled myself out of my victim mentality stupor I had fallen into and just said, what can I do? What can I do to avoid this surgery? And, it's kind of funny when you become a mother, and I hadn't been working for many years because I had been dealing with this brain tumor for so long.
Yeah.
Kind of just forgot about a lot of things that had happened and that I had learned about in my life, and I was just very in the moment and tackling the problem of the moment, the catastrophe of the moment, and
Sure.
very much in survival mode.
Yeah.
But earlier in my career, as you mentioned when you read my bio, is I had worked with clients with food addiction. And I had worked with this really amazing dietitian named Teresa Wright, who specialized in food addiction. And this was not an idea that was widely accepted in the medical community, that one could be addicted to food.
Right.
And it certainly was not accepted in the nutrition dietitian community. I mean, there may have been some rogue dietitians here and there that, really realize that's what's going on with some people.
Because if you have those clients, that's the experience.
Right, exactly. So what I got to do was I got to sit with her while she counseled these clients, and I got to really see, wow, this really is what's going on.
Yeah.
And seeing a lot of the same things that I later saw in my son, an entire loaf of white bread.
Yeah.
This was kind of, when they were feeling upset, and this was going well past, I ate too many cookies, or, I ate a jug of ice cream because I was upset that I broke up with my boyfriend.
Right. Like a one-off.
Right, exactly. So, what she did, and it was very controversial at the time, and she got a lot of heat from other nutrition professionals, was she said, okay, we're going to take all this. We can't take food out of your life.
Yeah.
With an alcoholic, you take alcohol away.
Yeah.
You can't take food out of somebody's life. But what we can do is we can take out the sugar, and we can take out the flour, and sort of these man-made processed foods, and, put you in a 12-step program. And by taking these foods out, it will help at least decrease your cravings, the physiological cravings.
Right.
Working on the emotional, you would have to learn better ways to manage your feelings than using food.
Right.
But so I decided, what? This looks similar. This looks like what I'm seeing with my son. And if anything, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything. I've weighed and measured his food. I have played food police. I have tried locking things up or hiding them. He finds them. I've tried just everything I could think of. If there's anything left, this is it. And, let's give it a try and see if it works.
Right.
So the other thing I did was, I kind of put the rest of us on the same program, because I realized, well, we can't be sitting there eating, hot, cold cereal if we're making him eat something, eggs and
Sure.
sausage or whatever it is.
Cracking open, drinking all the wine in front of somebody that can't do it.
Exactly. Exactly. So I instituted this food plan, and I wrote a food plan for him. I got all these foods out of the house. I got a personal trainer to work with him, which, for so many years, I was just like, oh, there's no trainers that work with children. I just blew it off like I knew.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, Cooper Clinic has an amazing personal trainer that works with children. So I signed him up to work out twice a week with this guy. His name is Shannon Edwards. He's awesome.
Nice.
And, just sort of did some other things, that sort of nutrition tricks. And the weight just melted off. He lost 40 pounds and was growing. So it was actually more like he lost,
More.
a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Sort of tamed the cravings. With this condition, you do have to kind of lock up food
Yeah.
at night because, kids with this condition are just driven to eat, and they wake up several times a night because their hypothalamus was damaged. And that's another thing the hypothalamus controls is your sleep-wake cycles and circadian rhythm. So they're waking up all night, and so they're eating. So started doing that, and it just was amazing to me. The cravings started to decrease, and it was unbelievable. Like after, I don't know, a year and a half, he looked amazing. Now, he's probably always going to be overweight, and that's fine. His liver enzymes...
But not like...
Right. Yeah. There's overweight, and then there's morbidly obese, where you can't run and you can't ride a bike.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to avoid. And so...
and how did he feel when he saw these changes? Like, what was his, like, getting a little bit older?
He was very excited. The big thing we did also is we used positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
So, I told him, if you can lose a certain amount of weight, we'll take you on a vacation and you can pick where we go. So he was very motivated to do it. And we kept like a little, graph line or line chart on the refrigerator. And so he could see his progress, and he was so proud of himself. And, he really did something that is almost unheard of for this condition.
And hard for a kid, too, to do that.
Kid,
yeah.
For any kid.
I mean, hard for adults.
It's
hard for kids.
Obviously, losing weight is hard for anybody. Yeah. It's really hard for children because usually it's being externally, motivated. It's not, or they may not have the tools,
sure,
to be able to do it on their own. But yeah, I mean, he was so proud of himself. He won the Cooper Clinic Youth of the Year Award.
Nice.
And he joined the running club at school, and he would walk the track every morning with his friends. And, he's been very supportive of this book I wrote, which I decided to write because Hungry for Solutions.
Hungry for Solutions.
Yes, a mother's quest to defeat hypothalamic and childhood obesity. So, I mean, he's been very supportive and a big part of writing this book. So that's kind of what it was. But it was sort of doing things another way because, when you're trained as a dietitian and as a nutrition professional, often it's, this mantra, all foods fit.
Yeah.
All foods fit. And, people are coming at it from all different angles. A lot of dietitians have, either a personal history or they work with clients that have anorexia, bulimia, and disordered eating. And so they're very wary of labeling foods, off limits or good or bad. And, but just in general, that's what we were taught. All foods fit, and that you should never just cut out, it's not really a food group, but, a big sweeping group of food. So we kind of went against the grain that way, but it totally worked, and we continue to do it. And
yeah. And then now, like, lots of research on the addictivity of sugar, of like, because I've tried to quit it before, and then
absolutely
wanted to strangle people's.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever withheld sugar from a child that's used to getting it multiple times a day?
Yeah.
I mean, they have a complete meltdown.
And it is super. I mean, I can just attest from doing that. Like and I was a smoker of cigarettes too. And I would say that, I mean, that was hard to quit, but the sugar, maybe more so, like just thinking about it, feeling it inside, and this like restless in the body as an adult, but even as a kid. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it activates the same reward center in your brain that drugs do. And I think a lot of children use sugar to manage their feelings. And, in this country, they put sugar in everything, even if you're not trying to eat sugar.
Yeah.
You're eating deli meat, or you're eating, I don't know, popcorn. I bought popcorn the other day and looked at the label, and it had sugar. It said dextrose, which a lot of people don't know is sugar.
Right.
But why do you need to put sugar in popcorn?
Right.
So
it's a salty food.
It's a salty food. So yes, I do think that it is addictive, and I do think that taking it out, and we didn't take it out completely, but we took it out. I'd say about 95% of it, and it did decrease his cravings once he sort of got it out of his system. It wasn't so hard to stay away from it.
Yeah, and the proof is in the pudding of seeing truly like the weight change, and then also just probably his just behavior and mindset too.
Yes.
Which is super amazing.
Yeah. So it was just, it's really been such a I don't know. It's kind of helped me find my purpose now to try to help other children and adults who have this condition, because they're all being told either by their doctors or by just reading online that this condition, there's nothing you can do. And I think, just like you said, when you get into your mind, there's nothing I can do, why would you even bother to try that hard?
Yeah.
You don't.
Exactly. Or if you were even told that like years ago, before it got to a point where, and just like, wait, and this with like fat cells, and then they multiply, and then you just can't get rid of them, and then it just kind of keeps you in that stuck spot, which is another thing that they just do not tell people, like right from the beginning of that, about fat cells,
Right,
and things like that, and what happens to you. So with this and just helping other people with that, what do you just tell people when they just come to you like this?
I just say there is hope. There's a lot of hope. And, I can't predict how you or your child is going to react to this food plan and this way of eating, but I can tell you that it will improve their health. There's sort of this spectrum of this condition where some kids, like my son, are going to respond beautifully and they're going to be able to lose weight. And there are going to be some that have more severe cases of hypothalamic obesity that they may not be able to lose weight, but they may be able to stop their weight gain.
Yeah.
Or they may be able to, prevent themselves from developing diabetes and fatty liver disease and sleep apnea. So it's always going to be helpful to eat this way.
Right.
And, I just tell them, look, you got to think of food as being in two major food groups. There's the man-made foods and there's the nature-made foods. And you want the majority of the things you eat to come from that nature-made category. And when we start, eating foods that man is tinkered with and added all sorts of additives and taken things out and put things back in and changed the consistency and added a whole bunch of sugar so that it tastes amazing, it's almost impossible, because you get into this cycle. You mentioned the fat cells. Well, there's also insulin. As people gain weight, their bodies start putting out more insulin because their insulin receptors are not responding to the insulin. And insulin is a hormone that helps keep your blood sugar regulated.
Right.
And so the more insulin you produce, the more hungry it makes you feel. And so then you're eating even more. And so it's this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And so if you can sort of eat in a way that minimizes this insulin secretion, you can hopefully get out of that cycle of, overproducing insulin, and then you can start to lose weight.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really, really just amazing. And so how's he doing now?
He's
everything?
doing really well. It's interesting because he's 12 now, so he's entering adolescence.
Yeah.
So, we've been doing this for 3 years, and I've had very tight control over what's going on. But now he's 12, and developmentally, I have to start letting him, have some autonomy and go places where there's going to be food without me there.
Yeah.
And, back off on just kind of trying to give my helpful hints, because with teenagers, it just pushes them in the other direction.
Yeah.
So, it's been an experience to kind of start to give him more control and to be able to tolerate, okay, there is going to be a little bit of weight gain that goes with that, because he's learning.
Yeah. And growing too.
And
Like,
growing.
yeah.
And, I'm fine with it. As long as, like I said, we keep him healthy. I don't mind.
Right.
I don't mind him being overweight. I don't mind, a little bit of weight gain. As long as he's healthy and things don't get out of control, then, we're in a good place. And he's always going to have this condition.
Right.
It's always going to be.
Because it's a permanent physical thing that's happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always going to be very difficult for him. But I feel like we've made the best possible, best case scenario out of it. He knows what he needs to do. And even when I'm not here, he has my book. He knows what I've taught him. And so,
And can see
has
what
the
he's done
tools.
for himself, because he's the one managing and doing that and gets that self-satisfaction with,
Absolutely.
he did it. And
Absolutely.
was able to do that. That's
Absolutely.
just so wonderful. I
Thank
love
you.
that. So now I'm thinking, I'm like, what else do we want to talk about? Like, where can everybody find you? And we'll put all this stuff in the show notes too. because I have a forgetful brain about where things are, what's going on with you, where they can get your book and your services and
Yeah,
all
absolutely. So I have two websites, marciserota.com. Last name is Serota. It's on there. And then hungryforsolutions.com. So you can purchase my book through either one of those websites. They also have it on barnesandnoble.com. You can get it on Amazon.
that. And it's not just for people that have this condition.
No, and see, that's kind of what I realized as I was writing it is, this can be applied to anyone struggling with obesity. And although, my target audience was children and with hypothalamic obesity, adults can use this book because I talk a lot about the way the body works and this whole insulin issue and what kinds of foods to eat. And, the food plan that I use for him, I mean, if you think about it, he was 180 pounds. That's adult size.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
any adult can use this food plan.
Right.
So don't let that scare you away.
Yeah.
And, I'm just trying to travel around to...
And the health changes that happen, like if you can see the numbers in that, so not just the weight, but as you said, truly like your health, because all of those things will lead you to a quicker death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it's just been amazing, just seeing him being able to run and exercise and, get through the day without falling asleep. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And it just going back to my whole sort of, interest in Ayurveda and using food as medicine. I mean, if you think about it, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
Is taking foods that just, were provided naturally to us, however you think that happens.
Yeah.
Whether it's through plants or animals, and just sticking with foods that we're meant to be eating and staying away from foods that man has made. And lots of men are making lots of money on these foods that are making people very, very sick and addicted.
And they do the research on it. I think they said like Cheetos was the perfect food of the salt, sugar, fat, and what's the other one that they talk about? The taste of like, that makes you like, and if you've had those, and the Doritos.
Oh,
and,
yeah. I mean, anybody, you can't stop eating, these types of man-made foods. So absolutely.
that are not good for you.
No, no.
And I love that. And like, I think with anything is if you can try it, it's not going to hurt you
Right.
to eat real food.
Exactly. And the other thing is it doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I mean, we do eat some man-made foods.
Yeah.
We just try to keep them to a minimum, and we try to keep them out of the house. So,
And you can see, like, so if somebody were to do this, like I told Marci earlier about I have an ear, nose, and throat dairy allergy and was told, to get surgery and all these kind of drugs. And then when I quit dairy, like after 3 weeks, I was like, oh, I can breathe. And then I would even have people tell me, like, that's not true. And they're like, wait, this is my body. But I do think like people have to experience them themselves. If you get this book and you try it, you will see.
even if you just try half of it.
Yeah. I mean, you can see and then you can know for yourself and just,
Absolutely.
there you go.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, like, are we really meant to be eating cow's breast milk?
Probably
I don't
not. Well, and if you just see like the amount of like problems that people have versus like years and years ago when our choices were more limited to like real food,
Right.
Yeah.
People did not have, we
all
didn't have
the
an
issues,
obesity epidemic.
and not food allergies out the wazoo and just all kinds of
Absolutely.
things that you're like, doesn't take a genius.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I just so appreciate you being on the show and sharing your story, and just for just other people listening, if you're struggling with like something similar, or even just with weight and with food, that there definitely is. There's another way and there's another option. And if you're hungry for solutions, got the book for you. And so thank you so much again. And all of the information will be in the show notes. And for all of you listening out there, you know that there is always another way.